Okay, so again, I hope you're enjoying the day today and what you're learning and the activities. Thanks for having me. And again, if you want to do this next year, we can probably talk about that at some point in time. So look at another series of clinics and stuff like that that can come together. And I've done this where I've done it as a theme. Let's look at all a series of presentations that tie to this theme, like industries or different kinds of things that all come together. I've done this in Michigan and Florida and other places. So at Cincinnati, Ohio, I did it one weekend and stuff like that. So got some experience, and I'm glad you're enjoying it. So this next clinic is, I call it Tank Car Industries, and it kind of looks at industries that are associated with tank cars. It's one of those spin-offs of selecting industries for your railroad. Then I told you that clinic got to be so long, I started dividing off different ones and different topics, and then expanded those. And there's, I don't know, 7 or 8 different ones that all deal with industries and are connected to that. So I've had a lot of fun with it. This first picture I usually put up on the screen when we're waiting to get started, and for people just to look at as an example of a tank car industry. So it's some sort of a paper plant. And when you look at the picture, you can see the lumber coming, the timber coming in, and you can see a series of tank cars there. And of course, as we get through this, we'll take one more look at low pressure, high pressure, cryogenic kind of things, but also, understand something about the industry. So if you're going into a paper plant, you're going to be using chlorine, which is a high pressure car. You're going to be using sulfuric acid, hydrochloric acid, these different products, and those all go in different kinds of tank cars. So, Rich is going to come to your basement and look at your industry, and then what in his own mind, he's going to be looking for low pressure, high pressure tank cars, and ask you to tell me a little bit about what products are coming into this industry that you need and what kind of tank car it is and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of fun to do, but it does get challenging for people as they look at this situation and understand. So, all right, so here it is. And let's take a look at this. So here's another example of a model railroad, and with tank cars in it, as well as storage tanks. That's another clinic, Storage Tanks 101. So we have all these currently in this picture appear to me to be low pressure storage tanks, either vertical or horizontal. And that's important stuff to know related to the kinds of products that come in tank cars. And then so we have some older tank cars here going across the front. This is a factory that's up by the north side of downtown Chicago, a chocolate company. And if you saw in the news recently, this plant is closing. And but it smells like chocolate, in northern Chicago downtown there. And I've used it in a number of different clinics and stuff like that. But I just saw in the news the other day that they're going to close this factory. But I use it also in my clinic on the smells of model railroading. How many of you do that? You got signals and you got sound and you got all these different things. How many of you have smells on your model railroad? You have a big livestock yard. What does that smell like?
Intentionally smells.
And you could say, well, the smells we use are based on the food we serve in the crew lounge. And there's just all different kinds of things that you can do with smells. And Yankee Candle has a lot of things. If you want bacon producing plant, you can buy bacon candles. And if you want fresh cut lawn smells on your layout, if you want 2x4 smells, they have candles for all that, or sprays for all that stuff. This is an example of a chocolate factory. And again, we have a tank car in front of it. And the question be, what do they bring in that tank car to use in the chocolate making industry for that? So things to look at. So here's a little layout operation and a couple of tank cars. And again, so I would look at this, and as Rich walking by this on the industry, I'd look, okay, high pressure, low pressure tank cars, which is it? What are they doing here? What are they delivering, or were they picking up in the way of waste, out of an operation? And look at those kind of things. And I would hope that the owner of the layout would be able to answer those questions for me when we're talking about this industry together. So it's kind of a quick look at a series of things, and the stuff when we do it on tank cars, you already saw, so we'll do that quickly. But we'll look at some of these different things here as we go along. So some examples of real and as well as model railroad. So tank car industries. So I asked the question, what do you think is a tank car industry?
Refinery.
Could be. What defines it, though? I have incoming product, raw materials, solid liquids, gases, make something that come in a tank car. low pressure, high pressure cryogenic. Okay, and outgoing product is something that we make, and it may be something that goes in tank cars when it leaves. Again, high pressure, low pressure cryogenic, and maybe there's waste and things like that. But there's a piece of this industry that dictates I have stuff coming in, stuff going out that comes in tank cars, and that's what I define as a tank car industry. And so again, when you're looking at that kind of thing, what are we making? How does the tank car fit into that? So we've looked at this before. This is ADM in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And what products do they make? They primarily make two products that they're known for, that plant. Corn oil, corn syrup, and ethanol. So this is one of the freight yards or switch yards here for the corn syrup side of the business. DOT 111s or AAR 211 tank cars that are in there and stuff like that. But if you go into this yard and you look from the highway down, you'll see other tank cars of corrosives and other kinds of things that are also used in the industry. So we need to understand the product that they're making and all of the things that go in. This is another plant in Cedar Rapids that makes ethanol, and right on the river. I told you earlier, the city of Cedar Rapids, the people who live there coined the phrase the city of five smells. ADM, there's a cereal plant there, Quaker Oats and stuff like that. So this is one of the smells there. This is up by where I work in Holland, Michigan. It used to be called American Aerosols. A kid I graduated from high school with, his dad owned the plant, and now it's part of Sherman-Williams. But here's all these tank cars on the side of the plant there. They have space for four. And so we asked the question, what do they do with this plant? They put the paint in aerosol cans, and then they put the pss in the aerosol can too. So, all right, that's fine. They had a big fire a number of years ago out and back as part of the history of the life of this plant before it was a Sherman-Williams plant. But there's 3 or 4 tank cars typically here, and they're delivering acetone. Why are they delivering acetone? What do they use acetone to do? Paint thinner? Okay. How about cleaning out paint lines when you change colors and stuff like that? And I talked to a worker there who I work at a Meyer store in Holland, and a guy came in with his Sherman-Williams shirt on, and I said, so you work down at the plant? Yeah, what do you do? And I said, I got a question for you. What all do you do with all the acetone that you bring in? I understand cleaning paint lines or changing colors. He goes, there's actually a small amount of acetone in the paint that we make. Oh, I didn't know that. And so, again, they're making the paints to go in the cans. There's a little bit of that, but again, the cleaning of the pipeline. So, asking questions. All of these have a UN placard for acetone, and by finding out what you do, stuff like that. And I'll tell you a secret. In high school, Brad Canal, whose dad owned this plant, that was our source of spray paint cans. So if we wanted to spray paint the lighthouse or the jetties out into Lake Michigan, hey, Brad, we need some paint. And he could get all these different nozzles. You got different kinds of things. So what a source of paint. Nowadays, you'd be in trouble for all that stuff. We used to paint Dutch Mafia, on the piers going out into Lake Michigan and stuff.
Yeah. Dutch Mafia.
Yeah, stuff we never got caught for. Like that. All right, so there's another view of that thing.
This on so we can... Oh, yeah.
But
in case he tries to raise the price on the next presentation.
So anyhow, so here's another view of the tank cars there. And again, some modeling details, about dismount off the cars and, don't move these cars because they're connected and different kinds of things. There's the UN placard for ethanol, or not ethanol, for acetone, UN 1090 and stuff like that. So again, things to look at when you're looking at these. I hope I'm giving you a new perspective when you're out driving around looking, that you're looking for other things besides just, oh, that's nice, and stuff like that. So another tank car factory, and again, ask the question, what do they make here? Why do they have tank cars? What are the storage tanks? What are they doing? Incoming, outgoing, waste, all those kind of things and stuff like that. So again, just a nice little factory related to tank cars. So, all right, this is in Hamilton, Michigan. This is a ag facility there. And the tank cars are sitting there. Why would they be bringing tank cars to this ag facility in the spring?
Chemicals
Specifically, like in fertilizers, pesticides, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's going to go into smaller containers, IBCs or intermediate bulk containers, totes, and go out to the farms and stuff like that. But again, the company's going to bring in large quantities of these products in tank cars, and then it will break it down from there to go. So if you have an ag facility on your layout, there's a reason to have some tank cars depending on the season of the year. What are you bringing in? Why are you bringing in? What is it? So this is Andy Keeney's layout up in DeWitt by Lansing, Michigan. So I should be able to ask Andy, oh, so what's in these tank cars? What are you bringing into this little ag facility for the local farms? And he should have an answer for me as to that is, or I'll help him out as we go along in the discussion. That's okay. But again, we're bringing in pesticides, fertilizers, things like that are going to be used on the farms in the spring. Is there stuff that they put on the fields in the fall? There might be. So again, it could come in, but this justifies those cars. We looked at this picture before. This is down in the petrochemical industry, Houston. And as you looked out over that from this bridge picture, man, there's a lot of different kinds of tanks, different kinds of industries. A lot of different tank cars are moving products around. Again, huge hazmat opportunity. And I was talking to one of the other people during this today. Whenever I would go to Houston for business, I would always sleep at the Houston fire station with the hazmat team and go on calls with them, because they're always getting great calls. That's the term we use, right? Great calls. Man, that was a great fire last night. Somebody lost their whole home and all their possessions, but for us, it was a great fire last night, And so again, a lot of things going on down there, and a lot of the pictures I have. Bill Hand was one of the hazmat team, kind of a famous guy. We go out to the Houston Ship Channel port where they bring in all the stuff and shoot pictures. They'd be in service, and he'd be shooting pictures. I'd be shooting pictures to use in presentations. So great place to go. And also the things you see along the highway there and along the train tracks, a great place to go. So again, when we talk about what does this industry use, tank cars for, they're receiving raw materials and other additives that they're going to use in the making of product. They're going to ship final products out that go in tank cars, if that's what it is. They're going to ship waste products that go out in tank cars. You've got to have facilities that upload or unload and load the tank cars. So those are specific things. So again, if we go back to our tank cars, I told you this morning that DOT 111 low pressure tank cars have bottom outlets, and they have top openings also. So how do I fill? How do I unload? That becomes important. If I bring in a pressure car, there's no bottom outlet. So it's all got to come out of the top of the tank car, where we have liquid valves and vapor valves depending on the process. Cryogenic cars, either sides or ends for incoming, outgoing products. And so again, what does my unloading, loading facilities look like? How do we clean out tank cars? Again, tank cars have to be cleaned out between products unless they're being used for a common service. Or if we're going to do work on the tank car, we're going to go clean it out or something like that, then it's all got to be cleaned out. And there's different places that do that around the country. Maybe they need to repair it. So again, we may need to remove a product from inside so it's clean, especially if we're welding and cutting and doing things. If you have corrosive cars, they have to go inside and they do a thing called a spark test, where they hook a battery and a light and two wires, and one is hooked to the tank car and the other one gets hooked inside. If it lights up, we got problems. We've got a failure on the lining of the tank car inside. So you'll look at a corrosive car for acids and bases, and you'll see a notation on the side: spark test last done by this date, stuff like that. It's a battery, it's a light bulb, and some wire, and we just check to see if we can get electricity through the car from inside to outside. It should not go because of the coating, the liner inside. But if the liner's bad, you can conduct electricity through the steel. And so that's a spark test, and that's done every so often. So you'll see on the specifications, spark test last done. And again, we have to weigh them. And so I got some cars, we have the outage, we can fill to a certain point, and that's as much as we put in. Other cars, we have to weigh for the product that's going in, because again, you don't want to open a car chlorine up to the community, but instead you're going to scale it and weigh it. And if you're doing LP gas and stuff, then you actually have a gauging device on top that floats on the liquid and gas is above it to measure how much product you have in a car. And again, I told you also, if you're loading cars in Calgary, Canada, shipped to Mexico, where it's a different temperature between winter and different times of the year, again, as the car goes south and it warms up, that product is going to expand and fill further. And if you overfilled at the beginning, you're going to have an outage somewhere en route where it's going to be coming out of the car. Not a good situation. And that's when the fire service gets called at 2 a.m. Hey, we got a tank car leaking in the yard, or we stopped the train. Or we had one in Flint, Michigan, where it was the wintertime and the switch heaters were burning to keep the switches thawed. And they had leakage of propane at a valve up on the car. And as it came along slowly coming into Flint, it ignited, flashed back to the top of the car. Now we got this fire burning on the top of the car, and they need to stop the train. Somebody calls the railroad and the emergency response people say, hey, there's a train coming into town with fire on top. Well, they stopped it in Flint. Okay. And it's like, now what are you going to do? Because you can't get the top open to find out where the leak is. You can see all this fire up there. But what do? There's not a lot you can do in the hazmat fire response with that car. So to deal with the issue before it blevied, which is an explosion, a blevy, you may have heard that term before, a boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion, or we in the fire service called a blast, leveling everything very evenly, and or like the, oh shit, obvious sudden heat induced tear and things like that. So they were concerned about that. So they brought in a guy by the name of Billy Pohl from Louisiana State Police who brought explosives, and he blew the car up in a sense. We call that a vent and burn, and where they put charges on top of the car to blow a hole to vent the pressure. And at the same time, they blow a hole in the side of the car and dump all the product into the ditch along the track. And they have flares there. It ignites and the whole thing's over in a few minutes, and with all the product gone. And then they can deal with it. So they did a vent and burn in downtown Flint, Michigan, because there was nothing else they could do at that point with that car, with it burning around the valving up in the housing and stuff like that. They later found that the shipper in Port Huron, Port Huron and Marysville, south of there, wasn't doing a very good job of loading their cars and checking them. So they found other cars in the train that were leaking. They found cars down in their yard that were leaking at the valves. And they said, that's it. You can no longer ship product by railroad car until you can prove to us you can do it correctly and safely. So they put them out of business for a while, because when you have a product like that, you offer it up to the railroad to ship and transport. It's not a guarantee that they're going to take it, and they want to know what your rules are and how you process and your training and all those kind of things. So those are things that happen out there. So again, we remember the basics. All stuff comes with solids, liquids, and gas. We need to know about the hazmat information, and we could spend the day on hazmat. Done lots and lots of teaching hazmat all over the country years, including Saudi Arabia and Trinidad and things like that. And again, we need this stuff to make things that are out there. So here's a layout. Let's look at the two industries on this layout. This is familiar.
Yeah.
You guys have been there before?
Yeah.
You guys have seen this before?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, at least once or twice.
okay. Well,
I've switched those in.
have you? So we're not picking on him or anything like that, but let's just talk about using these. Let's just talk about these two industries in this as part of this connection, this tank car industry. So the first industry there is Sherman-Williams, and there's a tank car in front of it. So I would want to know, is it a low pressure or high pressure tank car? Is there an era that this industry is related to those cars and the product is this bringing in raw product, liquid? Is this taking out finished product, or is this a tank car for waste? You never thought about all those things. You just deliver a tank car, pick up a tank car. But there's more to it in this kind of situation. So those are things that you would want to look at and in planning out these industries. What do they make? What do they use? How's this coming in? What's it going out? And is this incoming, outgoing, or is it waste? As far as that first plant there, it was Sherman-Williams. And then we go down a little further. We have I think it was GE, and there's a tank car or two there. And I would ask the question again, what do we bring into GE with tank cars? Or what do we take out? Is it a product or is it waste that's coming out in that tank car? And so again, those are the kinds of things I would hope after we go through this, that you will go back and relook on your own layout and say, do I have the answers to all those questions? Because maybe Fred will bring me in again. We'll look at some other layouts and I'll ask those questions at your basement. Oh no, kind of a thing. But that's the kind of thing we're looking at in this industry. So we got tank car here, tank car there. Is it incoming product? What product is it? And what are they using it for in that industry? And then is it an empty tank car going to go back out? Or are they going to put waste in that tank car and ship it out? And the same with the next industry with the tank car that's there. What period of time are we? Is DOT 103? Are we in DOT 111? And those kind of things. So there's a lot to think about in this kind of a situation related to tank cars at a factory. It's not just build a factory and have a tank car spotted in front. I'm going to ask you questions, because inquiring minds want to know, as far as that situation. So And I hope you guys today will have learned enough stuff that you'll be able to ask some of these same kind of questions on your layout and other layouts that you visit for that situation.
Your job, important is to have an unloading or loading facility.
Well, that's one of the things that's missing here. And I don't know why that's not there. That's not my judgment thing. But when I took the picture, I thought about that. There's no loading, unloading facility. That's another addition. Maybe they're getting ready to add that on yet. But again, you've got a tank car in front of the building. So I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to want to know. And there may be more work to be done for a facility, quote, to unload or a facility to load the tank car there on the spur.
If they have this material, would they spot the car away from the factory maybe for a while before they push it in use?
No, just depends on what it is. Yeah.
Hey, Rich.
Yes.
Hey, Rich.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm embarrassed now. But
Oh, no, I didn't mean that.
oh, yeah. But
No,
when
this
you
is
see
going
right at the GE plant, there's a little chunk of plastic simulated boards down there. I have been thinking about putting in some hoses and everything to where they would drop off the product there. But again, signaling and dispatching has taken a front seat. So
No problem at all. I just thought it was a great example from last night and thought, well, I'll just drop this in here and we'll use it as part of the discussion, to look at the thing and say, here's where we're going with this situation. The other thing, GE, what's that flat car got on it in front of the tank car? Transformer. So that tank car could be carrying what? Transfer oil. Yeah, the old days it would be PCB oil. Now the new days, no PCB. But again, that could be the oil that's needed for the transformers, which makes perfect sense related to the industry and all those kind of things. So again, I'm not picking on Russ or anything like that. I appreciate the opportunity to see his layout, beautiful work. But I thought this illustrates the kind of thing that we're here talking about in this clinic is, okay, what are we making? Why do we need those liquids in tank cars? And what's the finished product and things? And are we bringing things out in tank cars or are we bringing out waste? And so how does the tank car fit into the industry on the layout? And not picking or anything, this is a great example of what we're talking about today.
Let's vote on.
well, that's good. I'm glad it makes sense. I'll continue.
Good. Go for it.
All those in favor of picking on Russ, please raise your hand.
No. Oh, tough crowd again. Tough crowd.
I'll feed them popcorn before they leave. So.
I think you need citation and fine.
But those are just some things that I look at from my experience and my knowledge, my background and stuff like that, and where I can help improve, or I can just improve the model making and stuff like that in that industry. But it's a beautiful industry, great stuff. But we just need to look at these couple things here and say, okay, we probably need some loading, unloading facilities to go with it. We need to ask the question, what's the tank car there for? What's it bringing or what's it taking away in the two different ones? And again, Sherwin-Williams is a paint company. So again, there could be things in tank cars that are going to be involved with their whole thing. And then again, the GE plant with transformers, whatever, transformer oil and other kinds of things could all be coming in tank cars that just to make this even better than where he is right now. And so now in a situation of your situation of switching is okay. So I come in and I need to pick up the tank car over here. Do I need to put a car between the power and the tank car? Is there a reason in the hazmat rules of that era to do that? Or would they think about it? Maybe back then we didn't. Nowadays, those are things that come up in the discussion. So again, your operations there as part of that whole process. So just things to think about, not saying anything wrong with it at all. No, he's going to have more to do with it. But again, just to think about those kinds of things. Thank you, Russ, for letting me use this picture.
You're quite welcome. Oh, you're quick. Wow. Put it in there already, huh?
Uh-huh.
And I thought Fred was fast.
In his defense, there are signaling now on the layout to prevent runaway trains from coming in and hitting those tank cars.
So again, as we said, look at the industries, what would be going in, what would be going out, and is it hazmat? What are the rules related to hazmat? And again, so many people, when I do different hands-on activities with them about incoming, outgoing, and stuff like that, they always seem to forget the waste. what's the waste that's coming out of this process? Or I'll ask them, so are you going to use pallets in this thing? Well, yeah, we need pallets to put product on. Are you going to make your own pallets? You're going to buy them. How does the wood get there? How does the pallets get there? And that kind of stuff. So ask those questions. And waste is a great one to add on to your industry. So again, when we look at this, we have liquids at different temperatures and pressures that go in. Some are liquids, some are gases. Again, you need to look at that. Elevated temperatures. Do you have to have a process there to steam the car to get the temperature up so the liquids flow and not just be a solid? And all these kind of things are stuff to look at. So we also can say, besides tank cars, that they come in drums, totes, or IBCs, intermediate bulk containers, all different kinds of containers. And those could come in boxcars. Not everything has to come in a tank car. I like them in tank cars, but there's nothing that says that I can't deliver a boxcar to the side of the plant and all the liquids are in 55-gallon drums, that kind of thing. So again, there's all these things out there to add on to. It doesn't have to be always in tank cars. So this is one I found the other day in Wayland, Michigan. And this is a company that makes all kinds of food products. And so I took the picture and I said, these all look like DOT 111 tank cars or 211, AAR 211 tank cars, okay, low pressure. And then as I look at the piping coming over here and the insulation on the piping here, are these products that we got to heat with steam to get the product into flowing mode to come out of the tank cars? I mean, that's sending me that message right here. And I may go back sometime and ask them what they do. I looked it up on the internet, the plant and the company, to see what they make and things like that. But there's just a kind of a neat industry, and they've got the racks across the top so you can hang people from cables, work on the top and not fall off, fall protection. So again, just looking at it. Again, these are all insulated pipes here. So am I sending steam out there and then I heat the cars up and then we take the liquid out once it's running and fluid again?
How are they getting up on the cars?
They'll climb up the ladders and then there'll be a cable hanging down and they'll connect to that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So again, just another picture of the plant. So here's a food plant, and it's a tank car industry for either incoming, outgoing, whatever in that process. So, all right, the second part of this clinic is how do we make stuff? We kind of talked about that already. And I sat to a guy's clinic one day at some convention in America, North America, whatever, who did a whole thing on making paper. And I said to him, I would love to have a copy of some of the things that you're talking about in your slides. So he gave me the presentation. So I copied this and stuck it in there into the thing. And we're not going to talk about all the specifics, but again, just, it talks about how do we make paper? What is all the parts of paper making? And how do I learn about that? And where do we get into the liquids that come into making paper and the tank cars and stuff like that? So it was a great presentation about making paper and all the process of that. And this is one of the good things that the internet has done for us, is you can look up how to make almost anything, good and bad, but to learn for these different things and what kind, why is paper different? And I learned in Wisconsin when I was teaching in the paper industry that I said, so you guys make cardboard boxes here? Oh no, it's corrugated paper. Oh, excuse me, and so I learned something. Cardboard is not a word. Corrugated paper is a word. So again, this is just talking about all these things, how we make paper. And I just thought it was an interesting discussion of that whole process from his presentation and going through there. And the interesting really part is going to be here at the end when he talks about what's coming and what's going from the plant. So what liquids are here? So I got sulfuric acid. Those are going to be in 111 cars, DOT 111s. Chlorine is going to be in a DOT 105 car. The clays are going to be in AAR 211 cars. Caustic soda is going to be in a DOT 111. Hydrogen peroxide, DOT 111. And then, of course, you have lots of other chemicals. But again, when I pick out these chemicals here, as a name, chlorine, that's automatically a DOT 105 pressure tank car, just because of the hazard. So some of the other things are lower hazard. And then clays are something that end up in AAR 211s versus DOT 111s, but it could be either and stuff like that. So again, things to learn. Now, I thought this was interesting from his slides. There are about 3,000 or so different chemicals that are used in paper making. Ooh. So have you done the research on your industries and what they're making and how many things are used in that process? This was just interesting stuff. So here was it was up in Wisconsin. Here's the paper mill that he was doing the presentation on and all that stuff. But then I thought the loads, incoming, outgoing, from his presentation was pretty interesting. Again, incoming 30, outgoing 22 cars. Again, what kinds of things? Gonds and bulkheads for wood, covered hoppers, box cars, hopper cars, tank cars, and flat cars. Were all incoming loaded cars to this paper mill. And again, we can narrow down the tank cars and look at the different products: chlorine, hydrogen peroxide, oxygen, asphalt, waxes, glues, pesticides, all these things, and break that down even more. Then outgoing per day, 22 outgoing cars. Again, they weigh as an off product, a waste product, tall oil, chirps, and brown liquid were things that came out of there, turpentine. Covered hoppers, box cars, things that were going out, finished products. The box cars here, all the finished cons, recycle and trash, again, waste going out and those things. So incoming every day, 30 cars, outgoing every day, 22 cars. But again, needing to understand how do we make paper? What is the process that goes in and what do they use to do? So pretty interesting. And I was appreciative of him giving me that presentation so I could stick it in the middle of this. So this morning we talked about tank cars. So now we're at a point where we'll just review it. But before we start reviewing it again, so what do you see here? High pressure, low pressure. This is where you're going to practice out on the street. You know, how do we tell a low pressure car? When we look at the top, we see multiple things on top, from 2 to 4 on top. Pressure cars, we see one thing only. And again, you're going to see modern tank cars, low pressure, look more like a pressure car because you're going to be one big valving housing on top, and you may not see the manway opening there and stuff like that. So it's easy to make a mistake as far as that situation. And then when we look at the cryogenic cars, what's the defining kind of things? The structure to it, it's a tank within a tank. Again, we pull a vacuum on the in between. Valving is on where? Sides or ends versus up on top and things like that. So yeah, things to look at. So again, here are the numbers. We've talked about that. So again, you can look at those things, and hopefully you got a picture of that this morning. Anybody want a picture of that now? We didn't get it earlier. We can do it. But again, these are kinds of things that you should be looking for. Loading, unloading. Again, we said that the pressure cars, the 112s, 114, 105s, normally load and unload at the top on valving, and the other low pressure cars over here are loading and unloading from the top, or they have a bottom mounted outlet, so they can be unloaded below, and that's a gravity situation. Again, the cryogenic cars normally load and unload from the end or the sides where the valving is, as far as that. And typically, cryogenic cars are also not humped, in yards and things like that. So there could be flat loading, flat humping, but not up on a hill. So again, we did this very earlier, low pressure, high pressure quizzing. Again, high pressure, low pressure, the DOT 111. Again, more 111s. So again, you're going to practice this at the side of the track. And these are all corrosive cars based on the valving sticking out of the top there. Those are all corrosive cars. And now we've said, valve protection is very important for derailment. So up here you see the valves up and exposed, and now the valves are all in a protective housing. So it looks like one, but they're actually multiple. So that's how you can be fooled by the car. So I would look at this, and then I come over here and look at the specifications because I can't see the other stuff on top of the car. But seeing it's a corrosive car based on the placard tells me something that I can work on. So compartmented cars, again, This would be a 3-compartment car. How do I know that? 3 sets of valves on top. I got 3 placards, one for each of the compartments. On the end, you can see the 3 placards. Could be the same product, could be different products. It's up to the user, the renter of the car, how they're going to do that. So again, we showed you these this morning from 2, 3, 4, 5 compartments type tank cars. And again, what happens is the industry says they either need or they need to ship so much product. I need a tank car that can move this much. So if it's 1,000 gallons, I can put it in one car, or I could put 200 in each of the 5 compartments and still move the 1,000. What do you have available for me as the industry? What does the shipper have available that they can send over to my plant? And so again, there's not necessarily a reason. Or they may say, no, we've got to ship 3 different products, and there's this much. They're smaller quantities, so they'll fit in the compartments that are there. And so they'll have that discussion. So these are AAR 211 cars. So again, clays, corn syrups, not really hazardous products. If you knew the hazard classes, we would say most of this is hazard class 9 and versus 3s and various things. So again, tank cars on the route. These are all corn syrup cars. So they're going to be DOT 111s or AAR 211s. And you'll find the specs actually in the stenciling there. So, all right, high pressure. We looked at these this morning already. So again, high pressure, only one thing sticking out of the top. That orange pattern there is a definitive thing related to that product that's in that car, the anhydrous hydrogen fluoride. There it is, hydrogen fluoride, and bad to the bone kind of stuff coming out of out of Juarez, Mexico, into the U.S. And I've been told that stripe is painted that way, so if they spill it on the car, it's a protective coating that prevents it from eating into the jacket of the car, and or to the, in this case, the DOT 112 into the actual tank itself. And so, but other people tell me no, that's not true, and it's just something the way they color the car. So, again, a variety of pressure cars. We talked about ASTJ. A was shelf couplers. S was shelf couplers and head shields. T was thermal spray-on insulation plus jacket plus shelf couplers, and J was shelf couplers, head shields, jacket, and insulation in between the jacket and the tank. Fireproof insulation to buy it. It doesn't prevent the tank from blooding, exploding, blowing up. It gives you a time factor, an extra bit of time while that insulation in there, it's fireproof insulation, buys time while we try to figure out what we're going to do and evacuate the community or whatever. So, other ones. So we looked at these here. Again, the DOT 105 is the worst of the actors. Again, we're going to carry the worst products in those things. So here's one, 1818 and a blue flammable one, or a dangerous one, wet placard on it. So things to look at, more 105s. Again, we talked about this morning. This is the new version, DOT 105J600 for chlorine cars. So it's a hot 100 PSI better protection versus the 500 PSI. The valving on top is a little lower, better for derailments and collisions and rollovers. And then the J for all the features and stuff like that. That was shot by the Kansas City Bottoms out there with the BNSF, and everybody had all the things that just went by. And, whoa, wait a second. 105, 600. So, again, cryogenic car, different shape, different again, the structure of it. Remembering there's a tank and a jacket. We pull a vacuum on between the tank and the jacket when we're going to ship it. Valving on the ends and sides, and different styles. So, and again, we get into the tank trains with ethanol, crude oil, but it could be corn syrup and stuff like that. We now have a buffer car or two between the power and the engine where the crew is and the actual products. So if you're going to be doing modern stuff with ethanol, crude oil trains, stuff like that, you need to have a couple of buffer cars. And you can buy buffer cars from the industry that actually say on the car, buffer car on the covered hopper. Or you can get your own older covered hoppers on your railroad and make them buffer cars. All right, when we talk about elevated temperatures, if you're bringing in something that's needs to be heated to get it out of the car, or maybe it's already preheated and it's a short enough trip that it stays warm, then we have to look at, what ways do we do that? So we talked about inhibitors, and you'll see on the side of the car it says inhibitor, and those are things that are unhappy if they don't have that in there. If they're longer than 20 days, could be 30 days also. But as the chemical dissolves in there and the inhibitor goes away, it becomes unhappy and it begins heating up. It begins working with the chemical to pressurize in there, and not a good situation. So every now and then we'll see one of these cars blow up someplace, but they all have GPS on them so we can track where they are. We want to know where they are at all times, because if they're not delivered within that window of time, we got a problem somewhere on the road. So loading platforms, again, a variety of different styles. Again, you have to ask the question, what kind of a tank car do I have? Is it load, unload from the top? Is there unloading from the bottom? How does that work? And again, so you have the right hoses, the right stand, all those kind of things. And if we're filling them, how do we know when we've got enough stuff in it and things like that? So again, the different types of stuff. Unloading, again, load versus unload. Again, what kind of platform? How do we get the product in and out of the car? All things to look at. And if it's unloading, do we need to heat the product to get it out of the car? And that type of thing. So it's possible that the same platform could be used for loading and unloading. Just depends on the situation. So again, when we unload, we need to open and vent to prevent this kind of a problem. And there are some interesting videos out on the internet that shows the collapse of these cars, where they had steamed it and then they didn't vent it and things like that. And within seconds, it collapses and it's gone. So look up on the internet some of these videos of that kind of process. So we look at some examples. So model railroad. So this is good for Russ's layout to look at some of these things. So these are modern. We're going to be loading, unloading off the top, or loading, unloading off the bottom. But these little are types of things you can buy from Walters and stuff to be modern. See how it has a protective thing around it. The old days we used to say climb up there and don't fall off. But again, OSHA has done other rules. So this is a car I found in Chicago next to an old factory, and it's filled with paraffin wax. And they are, instead of having a paraffin wax tank in the plant, they just nurse off the tank. So it's right parked up next against. They get all the security around it, and it says paraffin wax on it. So again, what kind of an industry is that would be using it? I found a candle making plant over in south of Cleveland at a place where I was over there where they make firefighting turnout gear. And I just wandered around, and there was a candle making plant, and there was all these tanks for wax for candles. So again, this would be an example of something you could do on an industry. But to do this, you got to first tell me, what is the industry? What do they need? How do they need it? All those kind of things, for a reason to put a tank car in a fenced in area and never take it out of there. There's got to be a reason for that. So, again, another interesting unloading facility. The tanks are up above, they unload down below, and then they got to pump the product up. This is over in Wisconsin. So different concepts of doing things, but you need to think about it, be able to answer questions. We have a lot of transload yards that are out there now. That's another clinic. But again, where they bring in cars into an open field and they can pump off the product or load the product in these kinds of facilities. So here's doesn't have a stand or rack, but it's got something you pull up alongside the car to load it. Over on the far side, they're unloading tank cars along the road there. So this is out in New Mexico. So this is corn syrup in Battle Creek, Michigan. I was surprised that Post and Kellogg don't have their own unloading facilities. They're making cereal. ADM has a plant there. I just was there the other day taking pictures in the yard. And they bring in all the corn syrup there. They pump it out of the tank cars, put it in trucks, and haul it across the street or down the road. They don't have their own unloading facility for corn syrup. So this is one that's out in Las Cruces, New Mexico, where I lived. And they have the empty cars, the full cars, and they unload them in the building there. And what's the big hazard I told you about with corn syrup? Bees, yeah. So if you go to a Pepsi plant or these plants where they're unloading corn syrup, you're going to come there. You're going to see all these honeybees in the area where the cars are being unloaded because if they have a derailment. So This is another thing you could model on your layout. This is more modern, but there's a lot of places. These are in El Paso, Texas, but if you go up to Hartford, Michigan, matter of fact, if you go to the South Bend thing, they're taking a field trip up to Hartford, Michigan to look at the facility up there. But we have all this grease at restaurants, and somebody comes by and picks it all up. We have all this oil from oil change places in communities. We pick that all up. And then here's a spur in the modern day where then they come over and they pump that oil and those greases all in these tank cars and they take them back to refinery and re-refine them. So it's all used products. And so again, you see the little tank hose there, truck pulls up, they just pump it up the hose into the tank, and all that's going to go back to refinery. So this is a Saturday night kind of project. Let's make a paved area or a gravel area, put some tank cars in there, build some little ladders to go up, and we can collect used oil and used grease and things like that and go back.
There's a plant in Jeffersonville, Indiana.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and they make biodiesel fuels and all that kind of stuff.
They make food grade.
Do they? Okay. Yeah, they go around. I mean, you have all these fast food restaurants and oil change places, and it's like, okay, at some point in time, we got to get rid of all this stuff. And in the old days, they'd probably take it out behind and dump it on the ground. And but nowadays, that's not good. And so there's a process of collecting it all. That's an industry, a business, and then taking them to a tank car loading facility, put it in, and hauling them out, and it goes back to a refinery or some other industry that refines it, yeah, and stuff like that. But that's a Saturday night kind of addition to a layout in modern times. So again, here's just a simple tank car industry. So again, we look at the car, we look at the loading, unloading capabilities. So again, just a simple thing of one car. This is one out in Iowa, anhydrous ammonia facility I visited just north of Cedar Rapids. And so they have the car come in, they place it, and then all of the unloading comes from the top because it's a pressure car, there's no bottom outlet. So it all comes off over here, some little piping in this area here. And then over on the other side of the tank car is the storage tank. So it goes from here to there, another Saturday night kind of project. Let's build an anhydrous ammonia unloading facility for the community and stuff like that. So there's all the little pipes off the ground. And then we're just going to push it over into the storage tank on the other side there. So again, just tank cars. What are we doing here? What kind of tank cars? What kind of products? It's just illustrating them. This is one up in Wisconsin. Can't think of the name of the city, but anyhow, one time all it was done inside the fenced area and for security purposes. But now we got too much going on, so we got another unloading, loading, or storage point here outside the fenced area for tank cars. So something you could build. Another industry. We're picking up corrosives and either putting them in the tank car to haul away to be doing something with them, or they're pumping them into the truck and then do it. This is a transfer yard. You could do a Saturday night industry, just a gravel yard and load or unload, whichever way you want to go with things. Here's another one. We're doing carbon dioxide, and this is going to the Coca-Cola bottling company in El Paso because they use the CO2 as carbonation gas. So you just have a paved parking lot here, a spur or a track, bring it in, carbon dioxide, put it into the truck, haul it over because they can't take crank cars at the Coca-Cola plant. So again, another industry, Saturday night industry, just a parking lot, spur, and then have a plant. And that could be going both ways. Could be carbon dioxide. In this case, it's coming off to go to the plant, but you could have carbon dioxide coming in and then being put in the tank car to ship off also. What was the industry I told you earlier about that carbon dioxide was an off product, a waste product? Ethanol. Yeah. So again, you could have a truck hauling that CO2 over and put it in a tank car and hauling it away. So versus a dry ice plant. So again, just ethanol. Another ethanol facility. Again, some of them are big and covered and structured. Some are just out in the open with a little ramp to climb up on. These are all corrosive cars, sulfuric acid cars, and a little plant here in Iowa that receive sulfuric acid. So, this was hydrochloric acid in Muskegon being loaded up to go out. So again, a little different design, corrosive cars. Here's a loading, unloading dock. So there's some things, if you're going to model that take a little bit of work to get all that piping. But I'll tell you what, if you built that and you had some ingoing, outgoing piping and then some hoses up there and you parked the car in front of it and stuff like that, I bet you none of you would ask the layout owner what's going on. Your imagination will tell you this is where you're loading or unloading. I just got to put, you're not going to question him. You're supposed to have 3 pipes for unloading versus 2 pipes. What's the deal here? You're probably never going to ask because you don't care, number one, or you don't know. And nobody's going to probably ask you, other than maybe Rich if he comes to your layout, stuff like that. But things to think about. It doesn't have to be perfect or exact. Again, we talked about soybean oil. So incoming tank cars waiting to be loaded on the other side with soybean oil at an ag facility. So we bring in the soybeans, crush them, get the oil. It's got to go out as a final product. So this is molten sulfur and molten sulfur tank cars here waiting to be loaded. And so again, Walter sells a number of molten sulfur cars. But one of the things you can do, you guys are all old enough to remember. Remember in school the yellow chalk that the teachers used, and stuff like that. What a great weathering thing here and tool to use that yellow chalk to simulate molten sulfur that's now solid along the ground there or on the car and stuff like that. So again, just a modeling technique.
It'd be good to have an ocean car sitting there too. So
Well, the railroad people hate it. Yeah, the railroad folks hate it when they load and they spill the stuff all over the car because that blows off and drips off on them. And
Most people might worry about that, but they didn't care about the stuff on the ground.
so, but again, just if you had a plant that's loading molten sulfur into a car, or you needed to use molten sulfur at a plant, again, the spillage would look like that on the ground, and the yellow chalk from our grade school, high school days, back in the '60s, would make great materials for that. Here's another tank car. This is ethylene oxide, and the difference here is that all that red piping is fire protection sprinkler piping. So if you had a fire out there, that sprinkler piping to control that fire, maybe put it out, but particularly control. So again, ask yourself, what kind of a product am I doing here? Loading, unloading. Could I add fire protection to the loading facility in case we have a fire situation, sprinkler systems around it and things like that? So that's the red piping. So this is another ethylene thing, and the fence was closed in Iowa, or in Oklahoma. And again, they bring it all off here and load it in the trucks at this facility. This is where I find all the ethylene cars. Unfortunately, that day it was locked up. The day I was there on a Sunday, where the tracks were open, the gate was open. It just said, "Rich, come on in." So I did. Yeah, took pictures. All right, here's your farm facility on your layout. And so we said that we have communities where the ag facilities are the center of the town. Everything that the community needs comes in here. So in this case, we have a tank of anhydrous ammonia. We probably have a tank of propane. We may have a gasoline tank. We may have some oil tanks, as well as all the farm stuff that's needed by the community comes in here in either tank cars, box cars, whatever. But again, the green placard there tells me that UN 1005 is anhydrous ammonia for that. So that's a DOT 112 car that would come into this facility to offload into there. But so there is a 1005 car at the tank. So we're bringing in anhydrous ammonia and DOT 112, and that's a need for the community for farming. Iowa is probably the state that uses the most anhydrous ammonia in the ag industry of all the states in the U.S. for their farm. This was a propane facility up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So again, you can see the simple stairs going up on the rack there, right by the tank car to get to the hoses on there. So that's a simple thing to model on a weekend if you wanted to build that. And then the propane comes off and goes to the big storage tank. So here's a simple little one where again, they offload propane into the tank there from the railroad cars. And then a truck comes in, hooks on to take it wherever they need to go. So this is the place by Michigan, by Lowell, where they take the propane out, they pump it under the ground into the salt caverns, store it until the fall and winter when they need it for heating, pull it back up, put it back in the tank cars and haul it out. So, oops. So again, I talked about the under the layout modeling idea. And you could say if you wanted to do that storage in the salt caverns, and you got some scratch and sniff stickers, that smells like propane for, hey, if you have smelled us, you got a leak in your house, and stuff like that. What a great thing for your model railroads coming. God, you can smell the propane. Except for at this point in time, there's no mercaptan in the propane, so it doesn't have a smell. Just like natural gas does not have a smell in most of the pipelines in America until it gets to the city gate station, and then we add the mercaptan. So you don't have a smell.
It doesn't take much for a captain either, they'll back away a lot.
Oh no, just a little drop. We had a city gate station about 3 blocks from my house in Summit Township outside Jackson, Michigan. And we knew what the day they filled the tank because our fire department gets dispatched for all these natural gas calls. And it's just a drop between making and breaking the couplings and fittings.
We had a guy whose job was to maintain the odor tanks.
Yeah.
And he spilled a little bit and he been in his truck.
Yeah.
And then he parked in the parking lot.
Yeah. So again, just looking at facilities, this is an LP gas facility in El Paso, Texas. So part of it's inside the fenced area for security. Oh, and now it's outside the fenced area too. So they can unload, load back on both sides of the thing there. So another picture of it. So again, there's a lot of different things like this. You can buy some kits from Walters to do these things and put them together. This is the plant out in New Mexico that puts gasoline in pressure cars, which fools all the fire service. Again, just loading, unloading. Texas. So again, there's lots of examples. If you go to the internet, you can find lots of pictures of loading, unloading facilities. This was one in Kalamazoo. One extra thing it adds into there, these are spill areas there on the pavement. They're dikes to keep the product in there where they do the truck. This is unloading chlorine at a pool, Shock Chemical Company. So this is anhydrous ammonia out in Iowa, unloading facility. They put in these big tanks. When you drive through Iowa, you can see these big concrete tanks of anhydrous ammonia. So, but there's a typical loading, unloading facility. So again, product heating, maximum operating, it talks about exchanger heater coils. We talked a little bit about that. Again, the steam going in, and it's either going to go in the jet, in between the insulation there. There's piping next to the jacket. There's actually going to be pipes in the product that heat up the product in the car. So if you respond to an incident with a heated car and there's stuff dripping out of these pipes right up here, don't get it on your finger and taste it, because it might be product from inside, or it could just be condensate water, depending on whether it's out there or here. So stuff to think about, right, for my hazmat friend. So again, here's an interesting thing. We're bringing in oil. It's going to be used in roads and making. So again, it's all got to be heated up. And in the center there, we're bringing in all the steam heat to heat up these cars and get the product to flow again, and then we'll take it over. And you'll see that the tanks are insulated and stuff like that. There's a place I went by coming down here yesterday in Indiana before I got to the Indiana Northeastern engine shops, where they have all these insulated tanks for road oil. So again, I told you that you can also do electric heating. This is creosote, and that black box on top there is where the electric heater is, and the cord goes to a plug. So kind of an interesting thing. All right, storage tanks, just a little bit about them. And we look at storage tanks as part of the tank car industry. Again, low pressure, high pressure, shape, filling. How do we do it? These are all examples of different kinds of tanks that we store products in. And so if you're going to put a tank on your layout, what kind of tank is it? What kind of product's going into it? How do we get it out? All these kind of things. And I've been fortunate enough to be able around the country to look at a lot of different kinds of tanks. And I supply these pictures to my friends in Oklahoma, and we put them in hazmat manuals and things like that to look at. But again, floating roof, open tank, geodesic dome over floating roof, and different vertical types. These are different pressure tanks. Does propane care whether it's in a round tank or vertical tank or a horizontal tank? It doesn't care, and stuff like that. So, when you look at these things, here are refrigerated kind of products, cryogenic products. This is natural gas out in Iowa. So again, there's a lot of different things. This was out when I lived in Las Cruces. They had a propane tank that looked like a rocket. So if you got in a fire, it might shoot out. Those tanks over on the way over there on the left, spheroid and another name, I can't think what it is, really weird shaped tanks. And I found them in Oklahoma. It's kind of a once in a lifetime situation. and shot them along the road. So again, just showing spheroid type tanks for pressure gases. So again, just anhydrous ammonia type tanks. So, and again, when we were at Russ's last night, he's got 2 of these tanks on his property, on his layout, that used to have, as the gas went in, they rose up. And these were outside St. Louis, and you came in on the southwest side. They're probably gone now. It was a once-in-a-lifetime picture, but Russ has those on his layout. And
Those were left over from the manufactured gas industry.
the old
We
days.
had 5 of them.
Did you?
Yeah. Those were tiny ones compared to the ones we had.
Yeah. So, so that's what it looks like for real. And he's got 2 of them on his layout as models from Walters. So, all right. So we kind of looked at a variety of things with tanks there, and quickly. Again, we talked about industries using them. This is an industry that suddenly had a need for a liquid product, so they just ran across the parking lot, put a tank car spot there, put the blue flags up, and it's a corrosive car, and they climb a ladder to the top, and then they offload it into the plant. So there's nothing I can't say that, okay, let's build another product here, and we need a tank car to come in, so let's just run across the parking lot and make a spur and stuff like that. This was in when I was in New Mexico at Hazmat Team Leader. This is a company that made foam insulation seats for tractors and stuff. So you have 3 tank cars with 3 different products, had to be in the right order at the plant. And they piped them over there into the plant on the assembly line, sprayed it or poured it in together, and it grows. Kind of like that window stuff around that you glue around the window, you pump it in and it grows. This would grow into foam, and then they would cut tractor seats and all the stuff out of these foams that are 200 or 300 feet long, and then they get another. But the tank cars had to be in the right position, 3 different products to flood in part A, B, and C to do that. So again, farm products, again, bringing in fertilizers, pesticides, things like that. So just, when you look at, ag industry tank cars, well, is it spring or is it fall? What's being brought in? What's going out as far as those situations? So again, to look at. So just modeling examples. Here's the clay cars for paper industry, AAR 211 cars, and the paper products with all the different tank cars for the different products. Things we've talked about this all before. Ethylene, and I don't know what the deal is with ethylene, but if you buy the Walters kit, they all come with these white tanks with the red stuff on top there. And every ethanol plant you go by, it's the same thing. And I can't tell you what it is, but it's just a feature of ethanol plants. So, and again, what do we mix with ethanol? Gasoline. So there's that 1203 car right there. 1203. Again, this is a transload facility. So again, you could, on a transload facility on your layout on a Saturday night, you could say, well, we've decided we're going to unload tank cars here, or we're going to load them. We're going to bring in covered hoppers and take plastics out of them, or other kind of feed or whatever. Could be going in, could be going out. But this is a weekend project. Just lay some tracks and make a transload facility out of it. Stuff. This is a plant I may make on my future layout. This is the old City of Detroit wastewater treatment plant. I used to teach their hazmat classes there. But they had 4 chlorine cars there to feed that plant. And so I don't need the whole plant. I don't need all this in-ground stuff. I just need the back side of the office building, 4 spurs, 4 chlorine tank cars, and they just nurse off one at a time and stuff like that. But that's an easy kind of building to build, and it's a great tank car industry. So this was on one of my trips down here south someplace. I can't remember where it was, but they're unloading up there, and then here's the truck underneath it. So I can't remember if it's Knoxville or one of those places. So again, fenced in area, tank car sitting. And this is where they actually just stored them until they moved them over to the plant next door, where they emptied them stuff with ethanol. So again, how does it work in the yard? What are we doing in the yard with the cars? And so just some model railroad examples. So again, here's a unit train with the old cars where we pump the product through. We used to get a unit train into our plant in Bay City, Michigan. It had 60 cars like this, and they'd separate them into 30, and they separated them into 15, and then they put nitrogen on the end and push it through the 15 to take it and put it in our tanks for the Bay City car and wet generating plant. So again, just examples of tank car industries. Some of these we've seen before that you can model. And again, you go to the layout, what are we making? What's involved? What kind of tank cars, incoming, outgoing, is it waste? And ask those kind of questions and stuff. This was kind of an interesting layout where you had all this here, and then maybe it's not this picture, but they had an upper level. On the upper level was the other side of the plant, and that was a different industry. So again, farm products, and railroad facilities are going to receive a lot of liquids. Okay, so I got a spherical tank here on the ground. Long, is that a pressure tank or a low pressure tank? Pressure tank. So now I look at my tank car right next to it. What is that? Low pressure, high pressure? It's hard to see. It's high pressure, DOT 112. So that's a correct match. You could compliment the layout owner, And of course, if they have a low pressure car, they could say, well, Rich, the space it has to go to is currently filled, so we're just storing it there until we can get it in there. Okay, one time I'll buy it, as far as that situation. So again, pressure tanks, pressure car, good match. And again, it's hard to see here, but that's a pressure car and a pressure tank. And I have pictures of non-pressure. Here's your spheres and stuff like that. So again, are these the right kind of tank cars for that product? From different kinds of things. And it's wonderful to look at the Walters bulk fuel distribution site and see how different people model that and use that kit. You'll see it all over the place. So again, low pressure tank cars, correct. Low pressure tank cars, correct. So again, you can do some of this evaluation. So just ideas and examples. But when you start getting to refineries and stuff, then there's a lot to think about there as far as that situation.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's an example. We have a loading dock, and it appears we're going to load from the top, gravity filled, but I have pressure cars. Is that correct? Nope. These need to be low pressure DOT 111 cars, unless they're just stored there. But again, I can't load gravity filled into the pressure cars. I got to do hoses into the liquid lines, and I got to have vapor line to take off the gases so it don't collapse it. So again, if you're going to do tank car industries, don't forget the details. These are the sign, stop tank car connected, and you'll need that kind of thing on your industry. So there it is in another place. You may need to look at derail marks and get off the car here before it goes. So again, some modeling, nice things, added nice details. And again, we talked about this already, but are these the right tank cars for the right facility? Maybe not, maybe yes. Yes. Okay, a couple other final ones and we'll bring it to a halt. So again, here's a neat industry, and there's an old three compartment car there. Again, what do they do at this industry? What's in the tank car? What's needed? It's kind of neat to put the storage tanks in between the buildings there, just a nice scene, stuff like that. Bigger refinery situations. So again, wrong tank car for that kind of unloading or loading facility. So final example, Barry Hensel, a friend of mine, is modeling the Reading Railroad at his house up by in Canton, Michigan. And so his Pennsylvania thing has a big connection with Hershey's on his layout. So here's an example where he needed the Hershey's industry. They do things with tank cars and stuff like that. So did all of his research, and he's had incoming products, outgoing products, done all that discussion, and got the drawings of the plant in Hershey, Pennsylvania from his buddies, and what's there and how do they make it and all those things. And so again, he's planning here and setting up for what kind of cars come in, doing the work and all that stuff. Nice job, again, as far as that. So, take a look at some of those things and where you can help people out from your experience and networking and connections. Please do that. So again, things we talked about. Big picture. And that's where we end. So hopefully you got some ideas. So the plan now is to take a break, second.
15-minute break.
Okay, and then we're gonna come back, and the next clinic is a little shorter, but it's on imagination.